In this section, we're going to talk about observing light. The most important skill in photography is being able to see the light. It's not acquiring photography gear. It's about being able to see light and observe light as light falls on a subject. You see, you're not taking a picture of the subject. You're taking a picture of the light falling on the subject. And when you begin to think like that and understand that, observation of light becomes critical and becomes a really fulfilling part of your photography experience. So we need to understand some basics about light. So let's just have a look at some of those things. There's two basic types of light which we're going to look at. There's hard light and there's soft light. And all other light falls between these two ends of the spectrum. So we want to be able to see hard light and we want to be able to see soft light. And once we've figured that out, we'll be able to see what's in between. Now, small light sources are easy to identify. They cast harsh shadows and they reveal texture. So in this image, you see we've got the sun. Now, people get tricked by this. They think the sun, because it's so huge, is actually a large light source. But the sun, when it's in the sky, is actually a small light source. And what that means is the light comes from one very small direction. And then that is going to create a very harsh shadow. So as you can see from this image here, we have the sun in the sky. It is very small. And the shadow on the tree now is very dark and very hard. That is a small light source and it creates a hard shadow. Here's an image taken under really harsh conditions. Now you can see it's harsh. It's a hard, we say harsh, we mean hard. But hard light conditions, there's a very strong shadow on the lock. And we can see that the hard light is bringing out the texture. It's bringing out the contrast because it's creating shadow. And it's shadow that reveals texture. So hard light is very important if we're trying to bring texture into our image. Here's an example from a commercial photography shoot that we did. Now, this is a light coloured dress. If we'd have lit this with soft light, what would have happened was we wouldn't see the shadows. But you can see we've put some hard light on the back there. And then the pleats on the back of this Victorian dress can be seen because there's a very hard shadow. And that's because it's a very small light source. The light is very directional. It's like a small torch that's got a very thin beam. It's going to create a harsh shadow. And what I recommend you do is get a small torch, find some objects, and start playing with creating hard shadows. And also, when we go to the soft light section, which is coming up in a second, do the same thing. Start playing with hard light and soft light. And when you begin to understand this, you begin to understand how to create texture and how to create interest in your image. Now, this image is a portrait, and typically people will say this is terrible lighting conditions. The sun is really harsh. But I just want to point out sometimes that the light is the light. And this was the moment. It was a sunny day. These two boys were happy they're playing. They've just sat down for a minute. And they're in the sunlight and they're squinting. But that communicates everything. And we're going to talk a little bit later about breaking the rules. But don't be frightened to use hard light sometimes where most people wouldn't. It allows you a little bit of an edge. It allows you to create something a little bit different. And also sometimes the light is the light. And the moment you capture is the moment that the light gave you, as in this image. So hard light can be used in portraiture as well. So let's look at large light sources. They soften and reduce shadows. And they're good for portraiture. They're typically used for portraiture, especially a lady's face. Now, just on that point, if you're taking the picture of a man, hard light is often better because it brings out the character. But women and the ladies do not appreciate hard light on their skin because that will reveal the texture. And if it's a lady that's maybe, she's not 21 anymore and she hasn't got that youthful skin, she's not going to appreciate the hard texture. But then again, sometimes we might want to capture the character of someone and we'd use hard light. But typically with portraits, most photographers will look for soft light. In this image, we have the same tree and we have the sun. But now we have a large bank of cloud in front of the sun. Now that has become a large light source, and you can see the shadow has started to soften. And what's basically happened, because it's a large light source, the light is wrapping around the subject, so it's taking away the harsh shadow. And that's the way to think of it. Large light sources wrap the light around the subject and they soften shadow and remove shadow. And remove harsh shadow and just leave a soft, delicate shadow effect that softens and creates a certain mood, a certain effect. In this image we've used soft light because we wanted the child to be caught with that soft look to their skin. And you can see by the shadows, they're soft, they're not hard, they're not angular, and that suits the image. So this is how we would use soft light. This is a studio shoot, so we can control the light there quite easily. This, however, is soft light again, but this is actually a candid portrait. Well, it's actually a commercial shoot, and the client wanted some portraiture actually in the factory so that people would get a sense of context. But if you look into the eyes, you can see a strong catch light. And catch lights are really important, by the way. When you photograph an individual, always try and get some catch light in the eyes. But this lady is actually standing inside the factory. And then there was a large door, a very large door, one of those ones that go up. And that meant the sky was obviously a bright sky, but the light from the sky came in through the door, so it became an even large light source, and the large doorway became the light source. If the sun had been in view of her, if she'd have been able to see the sun through the door, we'd have had hard light. But because the sun wasn't in the doorway, the light we're seeing is the light basically reflecting from the atmosphere, coming through the door and lighting up her face. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because soft light sources is not just photographers in studios that can achieve that. You need to play, you need to observe, you need to watch. But if you keep looking, you'll see, and you keep watching light, you'll see when the soft light comes up, and you'll be able to take portraits with just a camera. Now what we've done with this image, we've gone for the soft look. We wanted a really super soft look for this cute child. So we've then softened it even more in the portraiture. We've actually sharpened up the hair a little bit, as you can see. But again, it's that soft look. It's that, that's at times that's what suits the image. And this is what the large light source, the effect it can give you. So let's just briefly touch on color temperature. We're not going to get bogged down in this, but we want to just keep it nice and simple. All light has a color temperature, and it tends to range in what we can see from 1000K to 10,000K. Now 1000K is orange light, or it's candle light. You will find you'll see that light early in the morning or late in the evening, and photographers call that golden light. Then you've got yellow light, 2500 to 3000K. This tends to be the inside light, the light that sort of can throw out. And then you come to 5500 to 6000, which is light blue, cloudy daylight. This is where if a photographer is going to do a commercial shoot, they're going to set their lights at that color temperature at 5500K. And then 7500K to 1000K, that's deep blue light. I suggest you go on the internet and have a look at some additional resource on this. I don't want to get bogged down in this, because the most important thing you need to learn at this point is you need to learn the difference between hard light and soft light. But I wanted to put this in here and prime your mind, so as you start your journey, you'll start seeing differences in color temperature. And what you're going to find sometimes is you're going to take images where there's partial sunlight and maybe partial incandescent household bulb, and you're going to get a mix of light. You're going to get a mix of color temperature in the image. And this is why you're going to get that, because there's different color temperatures. Use color temperatures, be creative with them, mix them up sometimes. Some people want to balance everything out. And that's great if you're on a commercial photography shoot, that's expected. But most of the time, the light is what it is when you actually take it. But it is good to be able to learn to see what type of light you've got. So I suggest take your camera out in the morning. Have a look at the golden light when you get a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset. Have a look at that light as it changes. Take your camera out on a normal cloudy day and look at the light, the color temperature there. And take it out on a clear day where there's no cloud in the sky and the sun is bright, and have a look at the color temperature there. And you'll see it ranges from, as we've said, the orange to the yellow to light blue to the deep blue.